live.
Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock and we're live.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Tuesday, May 19th, regular City Commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell.
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy. I don't see him here yet.
No, we haven't seen him yet.
Okay. Commissioner Herman Robinson. Thank you.
If everyone would please rise for the invocation led by Vice Mayor Pro Tem Scott Maxwell, followed by the pledge led by the Vice Mayor.
Almighty God, you are our creator and our sustainer. You are our light and our fortress. You are our wisdom and our strength. We ask for your guiding hand to lead us through this meeting. May we approach our task with wisdom, and may we approach our members with respect. May our conduct create an environment of cooperation and kindness. Thank you for helping us to accomplish our work this day. We ask these things in your powerful name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one nation,
Under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with
liberty
liberty
and justice for all. Okay, any additions, deletions, or reordering?
Not that I know of, Madam Mayor.
Then let's move right on to presentations. Item A, Palm Beach County Fire Rescue Annual Report by Captain Tim McCabe. Welcome, Captain.
How you doing, Mayor?
Good, glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me, and fellow commissioners. I appreciate you letting me present this today to you guys, the annual report from 2019. Let me know if you guys can see that well.
Yep, it's looking good.
Got it.
Okay, perfect. Getting right into it, as far as fiscal year 2019, alarm activity is typically the same as far as for most fire rescue agencies. Mostly what we do, as you can see, is medical calls, 80% or more at times, depending on the station. And in here, as you can see, Lake Worth Beach, you're about 80% are medical calls in general. And then everything breaks down from there. We try to give you a little slice of everything and the call volume for each of those. As you can see, the vehicle accidents, get up there quite often. So fires are typically low. They're a very small percentage of what we do now, especially in the state we're in dealing with the public. As you can see, as far as the total calls, as they've gone throughout the 5-year span now, or 4-year span according to this, or fiscal years, you can see we kind of dropped off a little bit, and we are even now from what we're doing when we do our daily briefings, we're off a little bit on our numbers as the media's even talked about. People are not calling 911 just because they are concerned about going to the hospital. So, next year it's gonna be interesting to see what those numbers will be. Our response time, unfortunately, has gone up. That was last year, gone up a little bit. We're still doing pretty good. It largely depends on availability of units. Some of the data that I have as far as that goes is Station 93 went up a percent on their availability of first due units in the area. It's just could be the call volume. It could have been what was going on in the area at the time. The opioid crisis, those types of things, put a strain on the system. Transporting more folks than we normally do, so that sometimes creates a unit availability issue, so which could drive that response time, because now you got a unit coming from out of the area. So that's more or less where that's at. We typically do obviously auto accidents. And that was listed on the page, and structure fires. And typical response still is our standard 3 engines, 2 transport units, an aerial, EMS captain, and a shift commander, basically a battalion chief, responding to a structure fire to give us the manpower to handle these. It becomes very daunting for a lot of these fires during this. Now we're getting into the summer months. It really takes a strain because of the gear that the crews wear. You know, we need the manpower sometimes on these fires. They're pretty extensive to just to get through it. So that's why we're still typically operating like that. And a larger fire could require a little bit more personnel responding on the first alarm, but that's typically our first alarm. The 3 engines, 2 rescues, as it states there, an aerial, EMS captain, and battalion chief. Good old Station 91 and 93 are still going strong. With the personnel in there, we've got the ALS engine and a rescue, and I said battalion chief and an EMS captain and myself at Station 91. And running calls. The battalion chief again is covering. You have to realize battalion chief is in this battalion 3 is what we're called, is covering 7 other stations, along with the EMS captain. And of course, the majority of the calls in this battalion are coming from Station 91. They run the volume of calls here in the battalion. And again, we got Station 93 backing them up. So the nice thing about Palm Beach County is we have surrounding stations, not just Station 91 to take care of the residents of Lake Worth Beach, and 93 taking care of Lake Worth Beach. But we do have their surrounding stations that, you know, help back up the stations when they're busy, when we get into hurricane season, things like that. So it's really nice to have these additional stations surrounding. Each one of those has, well, 3 of the stations have 6 personnel, and that Manalapan Station 38 is only housing 3 people right now. So our ladder truck comes from that Station 35. So they're close by because we do have some high rises here in the city. So close proximity is great for us to have them have that ability to use that piece of specialized equipment, and it really is. We've got some, you know, again, close proximity makes it nice. It's a short trip to get into the city and back some of these units up. Just depending on traffic, as you guys know, it always makes it problems for us. Traffic in the morning, school time, you know, but still we got there in close proximity, so that really helps. Just a kind of list of the apparatus that are some of these stations. I know you all have seen this before, but you know, this is what's covering your city. We've added some newer engines, some newer vehicles for the command officers to operate out of. Makes it extremely easy. They're very, you know, especially the command vehicles nowadays, they can get to the call pretty quick. So we're trying to maintain the apparatus as far as you know, age on the apparatus. Again, it's, you know, we're operating good apparatus, safe apparatus for the crews and things like that. So there's our aerial platform. It's actually called Truck 35. So that covers the city too, out of that Station 35. And so the folks out in the field operate in the operations division. And so we've got 49 stations in Palm Beach County that can assist us. So what helps is with those 49 stations, let's say during the street painting festival, if it gets busy, we can always bring extra units in, depending on, you know, the time, you know, the time of year. That time of year it gets pretty hot, so we have a lot of calls for people overcome with the heat and things like that. So we can always get extra units over here to assist and transport if needed. So that's nice having those 49 stations, the department covering it. We've got the special operations team, which again comes into the city. We are also backed up as far as hazmat goes by the city of West Palm due to the interlocal agreement regarding hazmat. So that's nice. And again, there's just a complement of things that the special operations units can do, not only for Palm Beach County, but for the other cities that assist us. Again, bread and butter for us is our medical services. We've got a great medical services division. We've got great protocols. We've got a great medical director in Dr. Shepke, Dr. Antebi. They really improved our medical services in the way we do things, and we are being emulated throughout the country nationally with what we do and the protocols that we are under. They are around the country. They're asking for our protocols to look at them and see how we're doing business, and that's really neat. Big thing, which is you all may be interested in, is that mobile integrated health, which we have a social worker on staff who helps run that program. And so if the crews go on a call, if they feel like the person is in need of assistance, they can fill out a form right from their tablet, and it goes straight to the MIH crew there at our headquarters. And then they will follow up with the person or family in need of assistance. So it's a great tool to reach out to the community and help those patients, not only during the call, but after the call. So it's a great benefit. We've seen also a reduction in calls by using this system. The term, and is the ones who call quite often, frequently. We've got a reduction in that, in them calling in order to get them assistance and things like that. Again, Traumahawk Air Rescue, we provide the paramedics, the helicopters provided by the healthcare district. We typically don't use it a lot here in the city. It's more in the Western communities. We've extended the time, and we're so close to St. Mary's and Delray Hospital that we can get on the road pretty quick with a trauma patient and get them there within the time allotted. So it's still an asset. Multiple patients shut down. We've landed it on 95 just due to traffic and not being able to get the rescue to the hospital. So it is an asset to have for the residents anywhere in Palm Beach County. So not only the residents of Palm Beach County, but the residents of Lake Worth. So it's a great feature. Air rescue, I know we don't see it much. They can come down to the Station 35. We've had incidents at the airfield over there, but typically not much. They typically don't live PBIA. We got a great training and safety division, keeps us safe. We are hiring. We're still hiring people. We've got classes going on right now. We took a class, a hire of recruits of 30, split it in half during this COVID event, and we've done 14, and we shortened the weeks. And then the second half, the 16 other personnel just started. So we're continuing to hire and train more personnel. We're upstaffing apparatus in the department to create a level of service that we need in order to treat people in Palm Beach County and Lake Worth Beach. So we're still growing. Our support services keeps us, that all falls under IT, building maintenance. The buildings are maintained so that for the safety of the crews. The apparatus are maintained for the safety of the crews. We got some great people working on our equipment and on our buildings and our software and the programs we use. And, you know, we're so heavily entrenched now in using computer reports for patient reports at the hospital and things like that. So it becomes very intensive now with the IT stuff. Our alarm office is really where it all starts, and they do a phenomenal job. I always praise them as far as, man, oh man, they really do a great job. With especially now they're having to do extra questioning of the folks that call in 911, getting the information to us as best they can, which is always difficult, but they do a heck of a job and do it well and get those calls out. They're under a time constraint, 30 seconds to get the units dispatched out to the call, and then they'll keep collecting information to update us as they respond to the call. So they really do a phenomenal job. So Bureau of Safety Services hosts so many different entities in there. I mean, we have our fire investigations, our plan review, our fire inspectors, our community educators, and I told Nicole, who is now your local fire inspector for Lake Worth Beach, her gumption, I guess, is what I would term. She's a tough cookie, and I think you're going to be really pleased with the way she kind of is going and inspecting. We've had some good stuff right before Mark Stivers left about taking care of some buildings and things like that. So she's done a lot of work. She hasn't been, you probably haven't seen her much right now due to not being able to go out and do some of the inspections, but as soon as some of this stuff lifts, I've talked to her and she's going to get back out there. I think you're going to really be pleased with the work she's going to be doing for you guys in the city. And just strictly, that's all she is for you, the city of Lake Worth Beach. Our fire marshal is Dave DeRita. He came from Palm Beach Gardens. He's phenomenal. Fire marshal, very strong. He's closing businesses down. I know people don't like to hear that, but we have to understand he is trying to make people safe. And if a business is not safe for your residents and your patrons, that's what we're there for. Not that we're looking for it, but that is the ultimate. That's not the go-to, but that's potentially what could happen. So he's really doing a heck of a job and bringing things up to a safer standard for the residents and the citizens in Lake Worth Beach. So it's awesome to have both her and Dave backing us up. Here's some of the fire and safety inspections that have been done. We're also working on updating per ISO for our ISO rating. We're doing a lot of updating of our files for the field personnel. They're going out and just before COVID, they were doing a lot of company inspections just to, maintain the records that we're required to keep. So, and it's for our own safety and for the crew safety to get out there and look at some of these businesses and things like that. We've had some great experiences with our community ed. We came out there when they did at Highlands when they had the walk to school day, and the kids loved that. That's always great to see the kids out there, and any program that keeps kids safe is phenomenal. We've got the drowning prevention program and our school safety programs, and they do a phenomenal job in getting these, teaching these kids about being safe and what they can do in their community. So we really got a great group of folks in that whole BOSS division and in fire rescue and the operations and the men and women who serve you here in Lake Worth Beach. So again, glad to be here, glad to serve you guys. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Well, first of all, I want to recognize what an incredible job that you guys do in our community. You're our family, and you haven't missed a beat. And we're so very proud. We know that you're going through heck and back right now, and with all the COVID responses and whatnot, and you guys are really being put to the test. But we're so proud of you. We're so glad to have you. And tell everyone that we send our regards and our best wishes, and that we're watching them and that we're proud of them. Okay?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for the praise. You know, a lot of these guys don't take it for the praise. They enjoy helping people. So.
Oh, I knew that. And also, I know you for the longest time, and I called you. They wrote on the agenda captain, and so forgive me, Chief. I realized I said that. I was like, he's Chief. So thank you so much. Vice Mayor, did you have your hand up?
I did. Chief, can you talk a little bit about overdose, sober homes, issues that may be related to that? Usually on the police report, we have a separate line item that kind of shows us that. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing out there?
I think it's up and down. I can get some stats for you and relay them to you. I don't have anything for you right now, but I've noticed, you know, in the time since this has all started, we've had some moments and some weeks that it's been very extremely busy with overdose, sadly to say. But I haven't heard of any issues per se with the sober homes or anything like that. So.
Okay. Yeah, because I sit on the state attorney's sober home task force, and, you know, I personally anticipate, you know, during the issues that we're dealing with now, the stress levels, that, you know, we may see a peak in the opioid use. So hopefully that's not the case, but, you know.
Right. Absolutely. I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, please note that Commissioner Hardy has joined the meeting. Commissioner Hardy, you have your hand up?
Thank you. I just wanted to say hi. I just wanted to say thank you, Chief, for the work that you do and for all the work that, you know, all the folks at Palm Beach Fire Rescue do. We appreciate it greatly. The economies of scale that you guys bring to the table, and the level of training and professionalism, you know, it can't be matched. So I very much appreciate the work that you and Palm Beach Fire Rescue does for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. Anyone else? All right. Keep up the good work. Get back to work.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're going to move on to our second presentation, updates and reports. We're going to start with testing in the city of Lake Worth Beach. City Manager. You're
there
muted.
We go. Madam Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. I think I get used to this by now. Yes, I want to go over a few things and provide some updates and reports. One of the big topics, and it's been a topic for quite a while in Lake Worth Beach, has been the issue of testing and trying to get our populations into testing. And while there's been a very large concerted effort from the county through the county healthcare district and setting up the larger sites that you've seen probably on TV that have been running for weeks now, they finally have started to drop back into a different mode in their relationship with testing at the next levels down into the communities. And I just wanted to provide a little clarification to sort of frame the conversation because I've been asked quite a bit about, you know, why can't we get testing? We need to have testing, and we all agree. There is over 40 test sites right now that's growing within the county. Now, very clearly, the ones run by the county and some of the not-for-profits, those are free to people, and the rest are at your healthcare providers in different places where you insurance or you pay for the tests. So we've really been focusing, though, in our populations because we believe that people who can afford to get tested or have the insurance, you know, that decision to drive to one of those providers or their own doctor is always out there and they can take advantage of it. But as you know, our population with the poverty rates and the needs we have here, and the fact that people probably aren't driving to these free sites, We've been really lobbying and working to try to get that done. Initially, we had some proposals come in from folks that wanted to partner. I know, Mayor, we talked about one group in particular, and we were like, hey, yeah, let's put up a test site down at the Osborne Center and let's go. Well, that was a certain amount of naivete that exists across a lot of cities our size, and talking to my fellow city managers across the cities in the county. You know, you think somebody's going to come in and just do the test. It's not that simple. You literally have to have almost a medical office kind of a setup. And what I mean by that is just doing a swab sounds simple enough, but you have to have an intake area where people who either walk up or drive up fill out the appropriate paperwork. That has to be processed. There has to be printers. There has to be medical professionals on there that they're issuing a script for this test to happen. And then you administer the test. It has to be put in the proper vial. It has to be tracked, labeled, and then packaged. Then it gets shipped to a lab. All that handling has to be handled very appropriately. And then when the test results come back, they call and contact the person with the test. That's something that as a city operation, we have no ability to ramp up the staffing or the training to even step into that. So while we were hoping some of these not-for-profit groups out there that had very good intentions saying, hey, we'll come in and do tests, the soup to nuts approach to where as a city, we can do the logistics, provide a site, do a lot of push of information out into the community to get at the populations and folks that need to come and get tested. We can handle that, but that soup to nuts relationship hasn't been there until recently. And I appreciate the phone calls that y'all have made. I know there's been conversations, Vice Mayor Pro Tem Maxwell with some not-for-profits, Mayor. We had a call today with a group. Commissioner Hardy was on the call with us as well. And there's a lot of now focus coming into Lake Worth Beach, which is what we've been really working for and asking for. We even had one group that was recommended by Dr. Lonzo, the county medical officer. So we've got our message up into the upper echelons of the county, and they see the results of the infections, and they know that this is an area that we need to get into. So with all that said, I wanted to dispel first the idea that the city wasn't earnestly trying early on to try to get testing here. But it wasn't unique to us. It just wasn't available. Secondly, the areas that did get testing, and I'll use Wellington, for example, had a home-based, well-funded, not-for-profit, the Premier Foundation, who basically is helping them out. Or other cities had fire rescue departments and some folks that could handle this kind of logistical testing and handling. We just don't. So,
City Manager,
yes.
do you want some potential good news now, or should I wait till
Madam
later?
Mayor, I'm always up for good news.
Got a call a little bit later. As you know, I was at the county commission meeting where I kind of talked about some of one of the only localized tests, which was the one that I mentioned last week or the week before at Sacred Heart, where they had worked in conjunction with a nonprofit group and Palm Healthcare and some other groups, and they did a testing, and their statistics were, I think they tested 300 people in the Mayan Guatemalan community, and of those 300 people, 66 people tested positive. So that's 17% of that 300 group. So the fact of getting testing in, so by the time I went to the county commission with that information, I was really, crying out as respectfully as I could for testing in the area. And we received notification a little bit later today that the county and fire rescue are working on a pop-up testing site, could be as early as this week, this Friday. And they will let us know. I think tomorrow we should have a definitive answer, but I approached the city manager about the Osborne Center initially for testing, because I really wanted to make sure that people in need were able to get that test, and having it done on the north side of town, the south side of town was obviously the right place to do it first. So I am praying that this comes through. I'm very grateful to the county and to fire rescue for looking at this possibility of a mobile unit being in here as soon as this week. And I will keep everybody posted, but for now, it's really good news. I'm just anxious that people get the testing that they really need. Have you heard anything about that, City Manager?
I had heard, and of course, we're working with county administration, Patrick Rutter, and the various folks there about the concept, but getting a confirmation, that's good news. I'm sure Juan maybe probably has his ear on the phone with that. So we'll follow up.
Okay, please do so. Yeah.
But it sounds like
Supposedly
it's tentative, and we'll confirm all that, and having a pop-up with fire rescue, that would be excellent news for us. That would be the second time we've been able to have testing in the city. And what's
Chief,
interesting, yeah, thank you, Chief. Moving forward, you know, the success we're having with people now pivoting over, the not-for-profits that can come in and literally do the soup to nuts testing with us, and the sites. We have a team in the city that is coordinating with the county, looking at the sites to try to put locations that are within easy walking or biking distance of these populations that aren't going to, you know, go out or drive to places. And we're being very strategic in those conversations about where we can place those. And the folks that we're talking to, whether it's, I know we had conversations today with some folks at Caridad and at Genesis, you know, they're very receptive to try to put those units in there. So I'm very optimistic that in the next couple of weeks, we'll have those not-for-profits as partners, maybe rotating through the week in different days, as well as the county's commitment to bring in their mobile unit that's currently being outfitted. That was mentioned and discussed at the county commission meeting last Friday. We're in line to also receive that assistance. So the staff, Juan, McShane, Lauren, Jessica, they're all heading up a team to coordinate those things, and we'll make sure that that's in the hopper. Thank you for that information, Mayor. So testing is something that we're going to see ramp up. And I just want to caution everybody that with increased testing comes higher positivity rates. It's not that all of a sudden there's a problem that may exist. The results will probably go up because we'll see these positive tests potentially coming in. If they do, it's recognizing an existing set of circumstances. It's not that all of a sudden there's this big wave of infections. We need to be conscientious of the data. What's important about getting the data, though, is if we can find people who are testing positive and getting them the information. And we've been working, I know Vice Mayor Pro Tem has been very active in working on language, multiple language flyers and pieces, not only telling people, you know, this is going on, but how to deal with it, how to change their lives and how they deal with social distancing and washing your hands and the protective gear and all those things. So having the test results, identifying these people and helping the community stem the infections is what we're going to benefit from by having these tests done here and wind this thing down in the city of Lake Worth Beach. So we're going to do our part. We're just grateful to finally start to get some attention from the outside on some help here. So that's that topic. On the food item, I know the Vice Mayor has been very active in feeding South Florida. And I know some of you all have also volunteered at the food distribution there that happens each week. We've been doing that for several weeks now. It's been very successful. I don't know the latest figures from today. I'm sure the Vice Mayor will probably report on that, but that's a great effort. It's something that the people in the community are taking advantage of, along with our other feeding sites that have more of their regulars that are coming through. And we're trying to do our best to stay in touch with the food pantries, the people distributing, because we do have a concern that while the city does not actively staff and run or has the capability to be a food distributor, we are concerned that the longer this goes on, that some of the initial information we had seen coming through in the larger picture of the economy, that there may be some interruptions in some of the food supplies for some period of time. And we don't know if that's going to happen or not, because the further people go from a paycheck and these large numbers of unemployed folks are seeking, basic sustenance, the strain on that system needs to adapt and be different. So we're going to monitor that as best we can. And again, coordinating with the county is one of our first go-tos, because they're pushing out to the major 8 food pantries that distribute down to the smaller ones, like the ones in our city. And through that network, we're keeping an eye on what they're seeing, so that that flow continues as long as it's necessary and needed in our community. And we're a community that obviously has a population that is going to be very dependent upon this food, potentially, as things go on. And whenever the economy kicks back up, there'll be a sense that there'll be a time for this to start to recover, but it could be a long marathon. And the worst thing that can happen is we would have people in this community who potentially would be hungry, and we can't allow that to happen. So we're monitoring that. We're working with the county, and we're also coming up with some potential other ideas within staff. We have another team that's working on that. So I'll keep you informed. I just wanted to bring that up as an issue because it is something we need to monitor and watch. And it's incredibly important that people get food. And I appreciate all your efforts on that. I know each one of you are doing things in that arena. The city reopening plans, there's a lot of conversation that's going on, specifically not about, when I say the city, I'm talking about the city organization that we represent. And a lot of the cities are starting to say when they're going to be coming back online in some format. We're first off seeing, we're not seeing a lot of complaints or any kind of issues with people getting the services they need that we provide, whether it's your garbage, trash, recycling, or filing for permits. We have systems in place that seem to be working pretty well remotely. And I've been very impressed with staff's capability to get all those up and running and make those adjustments. We do get the occasional, complaint that somebody called and they couldn't get a hold of someone, but we always follow up and close that loop. And that's sort of a normal operational thing that happens even when we had facilities open. But right now we are tentatively looking at June 1st, a phased approach of getting some employees back into facilities. I'm not giving any dates. I don't want anybody to misquote us because we don't have anything that's solid, because we're going to adapt as we go along. But June 1st is kind of a target date to start to ramp back up. Don't make the mistake. We have employees that are coming in. We have employees that are rotating. They need to come in for either the equipment that's here or to do certain work. But we have been very successful in having people working remotely, as well as the folks that are coming in, because there are certain services people literally have to put their hands on, and we're grateful for those employees as well. So we have a team in place. We're in conversations with the other cities. We're looking at best practices, and we're constantly monitoring and picking and choosing the best things that we see in other cities about how to restart our operations and reopen facilities. But like I said, right now we seem to be functioning very well, providing the services that people expect. And like I said, I haven't received tremendous, I haven't received really bad news from anybody about that experience. I've received actually some good things. And I want to compliment staff on that adaptive behavior that they've developed. And we're having conversations about, as part of this reopening discussion, events. Most cities are canceling certain events. I do need to have a conversation with y'all about the 4th of July, and I don't want to do it at this meeting. We've got other items on the agenda, but I did want to bring it at the next meeting on Thursday, because we need to make some decisions. People are dependent upon what we're going to do. So we're going to talk about some of the events and our recommendations on whether we should close those down because of the very nature of pushing people in large groups together. So I want to make sure that y'all have this discussion and y'all tell us what you want to do, and we'll figure out how to make things work as best as we can. So Madam Mayor and Commission, that's my report on those 3 items. I'll continue to keep you abreast of what's going on, and I appreciate the chance to report on those items to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Appreciate it. All right, let's move on to Commission Liaison reports and comments. First up, Vice Mayor Pro Tem Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a whole lot. Actually, the city manager covered some of what I wanted to talk about, and that was the potential for testing here in the city and the food issue. I don't know if anybody heard the news today, but apparently the president has announced a $19 billion bill, if you will, to help the farmers and ranchers and dairy producers of America get their food supply chains back in working order again. Along with that, within that $19 million or $19 billion package is $3 billion that's been carved out to be used specifically for purchasing surplus crops and whatnot throughout the nation and place them into food banks around the country. So we can expect to see $2 or $3 billion worth of products being backfilled, if you will, into the food bank systems throughout the United States. So that is definitely good news. But other than that, I just want to remind everybody to, let's be safe. I know there's a lot of anxiety and anticipation of us opening up, and people are excited to get back outside, but we're not out of the woods, and we want to make sure that that as we move forward, that people, do the things that we all know we need to do, and wash our hands and wear our face mask and maintain our distance. And I think if we do that, then I think we're going to be in good shape. And I'm very optimistic about how we're going to rebound economically here in the city. And I just can't wait for us to, slowly but surely keep opening up more and more each day and getting back to some sense of normalcy. So that's all I've got, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner Hardy?
Sure, thank you. And thank you, Madam Mayor, for your advocacy at the County Commission last week. I went the week before, and I think, both of us had a very consistent message on testing. Where is it? In Lake Worth Beach. And so I'm glad that we're going to see testing in our city where it's needed and where we have more documented cases per capita than there are in other cities. So clearly there's a need, and I'm glad that the resources are beginning to follow the need. And so let's hope that there's follow through on the part of the county and that we could get what our residents deserve. And my feeling is just more broadly that it's a shame that testing is falling on the thousands and thousands of local governments across the country. It's been said, like fighting a war, and you don't fight a war with 1,000 individual municipalities each doing their individual thing. We're in a way competing against each other. Why should we have to do this to get something that we all need? So I just wish that there was a stronger federal response. Just something on our radar. I believe that the governor extended his eviction moratorium to June 2nd. June 2nd is the date of our next regular meeting. I wish that it was extended a little bit beyond that, because there are a lot of people who are 2 months behind on their rent and who haven't been working. And they haven't been working because that's what we needed for our public health. And they're not going to be able to just pay rent all of a sudden at the end of 2 months having not worked. And many of them were already living paycheck to paycheck. So I'll be, in my capacity as a city commissioner, sending a letter to the governor asking him to extend the moratorium even further, and to provide some kind of guidance for landlords to work with their tenants. What I certainly don't want to see anywhere, but especially in our city, where in 2016, for example, which was a fine year economically, 3 families were being evicted every 4 days. That's I certainly don't want to see a rash of evictions when this is all over. And I really hope that landlords work with their tenants. So, there are lots of things for us to be concerned about, to look forward to. I wish that we had better data from the health department. There have been news articles about that. But we are going towards a reopening. And I hope that this works out well.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Robinson? You're under your mute button. Click it. Can you click your? click up in the right-hand side of your window. Do you see a mute? If you hold your mouse up on the right-hand side of your picture.
Right there.
All right, jeez. And there was no foul language, I hope. I'll try to be brief. I really appreciated the mayor's appearance at the county commission and hope for her success in testing, and any other money that they might want to send our way in terms of businesses and food and all the crunch that we're going to go through in these times. I didn't ask about the testing. Captain McCabe is going to, I'm looking forward to his help with the testing. I want to mention North Grade's class of Miss Owens is interested in doing study of the drains, the storm drains, and how they affect the pollution and the environment. And we're looking forward to helping her out with that class. I want to mention the Lake Worth High Sound and Miss Cox and her success, and what a great thing she's been done with the musicians out there. Looking, this weekend is Memorial Day weekend. I haven't heard whether we're going to have a ceremony at the cemetery or not, but I, as a veteran, want to mention the importance of Memorial Day. The development over the summer happens a lot, and any development in neighborhoods, any development in the city is in a neighborhood, needs to be in communication with the neighborhoods in that is affected. Communication is one of my, I think that's very important. I want to thank staff for setting up the coffee tomorrow morning at 9:30. Lauren and Keith and Ben. I also want to mention customer service. Franco is probably a great part of our mental ease in dealing with the frustrations that he has to deal with in terms of utilities and just customer service in general. In terms of moving forward, Commissioner Hardy mentioned a letter. I'm interested in sending a letter to Senators Rubio and Scott in terms of the money going to the most needy, not the people with the most money. The banks always are very willing to loan money to people with money, and government, I'm afraid, is always has the ability to give money to people with the most money. The businesses downtown, I look forward to all of them being open. The fairness of how each are operating is very important to the health of our community. Fairness is important to that success. I'm also interested in having, as things get messier and decisions have to be made, I think we need a special meeting in terms of how we're going to then deal with the steps to get us back to normal. So I think we're all willing to step up for special meetings or workshops to help in the process of getting back to normal. The war is not over, and I appreciate the president understanding that we do more testing, we'll find more cases. Always state the obvious, and that's looking forward to the fact that Lake Worth's positive testing has increased, and it's turning out to be a hotspot in the county. And the more testing, we'll be able to deal with the people that are sick. That's it. And I'm sorry, I had a lot of words here, but it took a while. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I want to start by saying a very big happy birthday to our city clerk. And happy birthday, Herman Robinson, Commissioner Robinson. Happy birthday. Sometimes we forget. We didn't want to forget you today.
Thank you.
I want to thank the city staff and the CRA for our great new signs that are going up around the city. It's taken quite a few years working with the CRA and the design team, but we've got some great new colorful signs going up. Thank you, thank you. Yes, working on the food distribution. This morning we had 700 cars come through. We're going to continue to do this at the CRA Hatch location every Tuesday morning. Lineup starts as early as 6 a.m. We get there at 7:30 to meet the trucks, and there's already vehicles lined up. Sometimes we have cars that lined up all the way back to Congress, and we usually open that about 9 and go through about 700 cars in 2 hours. Also, I'm working with Bucan and Grotto Restaurant from West Palm Beach. I started with 300 prepared meals every Saturday. Now I'm up to 500 prepared meals. And like the city manager alluded to last meeting, we're trying to fill those gaps. So we're identifying people that may need prepared meals. I'm delivering to some of the senior centers for the children, Patrick on Wingfield. And then also Patrick on Wingfield is feeding, I call him a food bank, but you know, he's a lot of things. He's doing prepared meals and also takeaway. That is either a bike, walk up, or car. They're set up for all three, and he's feeding 5 days a week. Jess Savage and I are still putting together a complete list of the feeding programs, the Church of the Glades, other people in the city of Lake Worth that are feeding during the week, so we can make sure that nobody's falling through the cracks there. And if you hear of any groups, people that need food, feel free to get that information to me, and we'll try to put them down on the list and get food over to them, or make sure that they get through the line on Tuesdays. 2020 census. We're passing out 2020 census in 3 different languages. We're passing out flyers there at the food giveaways. Very, very important with so many people at home. Take the census. It's quite interesting how the census, especially in the hard to reach areas that may now have computers through the school board, they're still calling in. There's a lot of 1-888 number being used. So that's quite interesting, but Jess is doing some statistics and great information coming out. One thing that popped up with Jess statistics that jumped out at me is we have a little over 7,000 students in school. And if you say there's at least 1 to 2 parents, if not more family members in a house, that's over 21,000 people. So, you know, I truly believe that the city of Lake Worth Beach is at 50,000 or more, but we need them counted. So, you know, I reach out to all my fellow electeds to get on your social medias, reach out any way you can, and make sure that everybody's taking their census. East side, west side, you know, even the east side is down. And, you know, there's just no excuse for anybody not to be taking the census and getting counted. Want to reach out to you, Madam Mayor and Vice Mayor Pro Temp, and thank you. I drove through the Park of Commerce today. It's beautiful. Thank you for all your help, helping me and helping the city of Lake Worth Beach and Tallahassee, fighting for the grants and the funds that we did, 7 years ago. All those millions of dollars look great in the Park of Commerce. The roads look great, and it's coming along. So I just wanted to say a big thank you. And I think that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And it's bringing lots of jobs too. So once we get through this, more jobs for Lake Worth Beach. You mentioned Patrick Livingston. This is a gentleman that really is a local hero here in our community. And I've known him for, goodness gracious, 11 years now. No, probably 9 years. But he's just got a heart of gold and a passion and a great chef and a great human being. And he's putting his heart and soul into this. When food couldn't get to a lot of different places, he's out there just about every day. Would you say 5 days a week is up to now?
At least 5 days a week, and they're there, 7 days a week. But if somebody knocks on the door, they're there, they'll give them something. But they're feeding at least 5 days a week with prepared meals.
Well, I still remember when he came to me in the very beginning saying he wanted to do this. And I was like, really, you're going to be able to hold this up? He's held it up for all those years. And one of the things I know I mentioned to the city manager earlier, I'll take anything that the county gives us in reference to this testing. If they can do it on Friday, they mentioned Friday, but again, they can't confirm it. But if we're doing other testings, which I hope we are, and I know that a lot of the nonprofits, I spoke with Miss Reggie and I spoke with all kinds of people today. We'll take as many as we can. Again, these pockets that we're talking about in testing that haven't really had the testing at all. There's pockets in every city, and it's not getting to them either. Every city is going to endure this in certain sections of their city if they don't have somebody mobilized and advocating for them to do it. And I know the different neighborhoods in different cities, and I've spoken with some of their mayors, and they're frustrated. So let's get this Mobile County and PB and Fire Rescue going, and let's get out there. Time is of the essence. Right now, these recent the soon testings is going to be for people that are already exhibiting symptoms of this, and then future testing will be for people that who are just developing that in the coming week or 2 weeks. So whatever we need to do, we're going to do it. So keep praying for that. TPA has the meeting. We're doing virtual meetings also this Thursday. We'll have that meeting. And don't forget, I've got a mayor's message every Friday that goes out. If you've got something that you want to share and with the city and some good news too, send it to me, please. I'm inundated with all the hard stuff, and that's okay. I signed up for that, but also let me know of the really good people out there that are doing extraordinary things here in our community, so I can share it at these virtual meetings. I'd really like that. Thank you so much, guys. And let's move on. We're going to move on to public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. City Clerk, do you have them?
I have a lot of them, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
The first one is from Greg Richter at 1202 South Palmway. I am writing today, Mr. Richter writes, I am writing today regarding the discussion from your last meeting on giving forbearance to businesses on city-owned property. I support the city offering a forbearance on these businesses with their rent, regardless whether they stayed open or not. If you want to offer limited forbearance to those that closed, that has some merit. This is not giving money away, but nearly pushing their payments out to better economic times. Last month, we turned power back on to anyone cut off for non-payment, and also would not cut off additional households for going forward during this crisis. As of last week, that number jumped to 2,600 people. This was done without any vetting like we do for businesses. I supported this action on utilities, just would have preferred not to have all the unnecessary drama. In the spirit of transparency, are there any of the city commissioners taking advantage of the utility non-cutoff? I want to close by saying that while I may not agree with everything that you do, I appreciate each and everyone's hard work and dedication to make Lake Worth Beach the special place that it is. And Jennifer Calderon of 3068 Lake Worth Road writes, I would like information as to find out why Lake Worth Beach City Commissioners voted to allow Priority Towing, Inc. to handle all Palm Beach County Sheriff Department police-directed tows inside the city limits of the city of Lake Worth Beach, instead of either allowing all companies currently on the list to be included or sent out an updated bid so all companies have fair and equal access to bid on such a change. This change is unfair to other businesses on the current list and is not fair to the residents of Lake Worth Beach, as this location is farther than most of the towing companies on the current list, and residents are charged more for mileage, hurting residents even more. Ramon Munez of 1313 North M Street writes, as restaurants open downtown to bring more businesses into downtown and help with social distancing while providing a safer environment and more opportunities, I think it would be a good idea, if at all possible, to close Lake Avenue and Lucerne for the time being, at least during the weekends. Restaurants and bars, if it's not raining, could bring seating and service to the street, bringing more income into the cities besides jobs. The next is from Michael Bradshaw at 236 Wellesley Drive. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Michael Bradshaw. I am a lifelong resident of Lake Worth, 67 years. My wife and I bought our home at 236 Wellesley Drive in 1986, raising our children there. We still live there. When we bought our home, the original historic cement tile roof had been removed and replaced with asbestos shingles. After years of repair, the roof needed to be replaced. We researched roofing options and chose metal panel as the best option. Metal roofing was considerably more expensive, but we were swayed by the fact that the metal was most environmentally friendly option. Material can be recycled. 2, life of a metal roof is 40 to 70 years. Parens, this is 2 to 3 shingle roof. 3, energy efficient, reduces electric bill by 20 to 30%. 4, maximum wind resistance. 5, low weight to help preserve structural integrity and life of structure. We got estimates and hired a roofer. When he went to obtain a permit, he was told we could not put on a metal roof as per the historical board. We needed to move forward as our old roof was leaking. After trying to reach Jordan Hodges by phone 3 times with no reply, I contacted a lawyer, and the answer to the reason for the denial was essentially, if the structure was wood frame and the metal would be allowed, but not allowed because it's concrete block with plaster, and the board believes that that would not be appropriate. All of these changes and restrictions have come into play long after I bought my home 35 years ago. Had these restrictions been in place at that time, I don't believe I would have bought in College Park. The metal roof restriction was adopted just 2 years ago. I have a house next door to me at 240 Wellesley Drive, College Park, that has been abandoned for the last 4 years or more. The house is uninhabitable. Flat deck roof is completely shot with gaping holes that leak, as well as trees growing on the roof. The soffit and fascia is rotted and torn away across the front of the house. On the front above the porch is a hole that lets animals come and go. Homeless people camp out in the backyard, leaving their wine and whiskey bottles. The interior of the home is so full of mold and mildew that the inspectors from the bank refuse to enter. I've spoken to a realtor about selling my home. His response was, with this house next door, 240 Wellesley, he did not think I could get a fair price, if I could even sell at all. I've spoken to the city from Mayor Pam Triola, Commissioner Amoroso, as well as the code enforcement numerous times. Nothing has changed. All I want is a new roof, the type that you find all over the city, including College Park, a roof that is aesthetically pleasing as well as environmentally sound. I believe the city of Lake Worth Beach, if they truly want to improve neighborhoods, need to take a look at their priorities. Then we have a note from Cheryl Rashkin of 1302 South Palmway. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, and city staff. It took me a while to compose this, as I have never had liked to submit an item while I'm angry, but unfortunately, I am angry. 1, it seems that once again, property on South Federal Highway is being purchased by a nonprofit entity to be used as transitional housing. This effort is being assisted by city staff, and I have been advised that it is a done deal. But now I am aware that a transitional home with 8+ units and a communal kitchen is to be built on South Federal Highway. I'm all for assisting persons that need help getting back on their feet, but I think the South Federal Highway has more than its fair share of these types of housing units. There is open land of the same size in the north end of the city that could be used for this project. Since the influx of OxyContin usage over the past few years, South Federal Highway and its surrounding residential neighborhoods have been overrun with persons needing assistance to get back on the road to recovery. Many have succeeded, but quite a few have not, causing these neighborhoods, South Palm Park and Pineapple Beach, to incur increased crime, drug sales, and prostitution. The city staff has been tasked to help remedy this situation, but with the advent of COVID-19, that has understandably been placed on hold. 2, the Planning and Zoning Board is meeting tomorrow evening to review a change in the unit density at the same area of South Federal Highway from 20 to 30+ units. Increasing the density along this corridor will do irreparable harm to the single-family neighborhoods that border this thoroughfare. We have already experienced what happens when people live right on top of each other in the south end of Federal Highway. Crime is a constant chronic issue with drug use and sales rampant and street level prostitution 24/7. The long-range plan, keeping density at 20 units per acre, allows for the development of communities like the townhomes, which are not as intensive on the neighboring single-family homes east and west of Federal. I have sent in a public comment card for them to deny the increase and recommend they keep the current zoning and density at 20 units per acre along Federal Highway. I know that you will not be getting their recommendation on this issue until next month, but I wanted to put a bee in your collective bonnets to reconsider making this change to increase the density in this area until the issues of excessive crime, drugs, and prostitution has been eradicated or reduced. Lastly, to end on a high note, each of us have had some stressful times over the past few weeks, and I can see a light at the end of the tunnel, even with my angst regarding the above issues. I wish to thank our city manager, Mr. Bornstein, for navigating the difficulties as he has encountered these past few months in keeping the city and its citizens safe. Thank you, Mayor Pam and Commissioner Scott, for all you've done to help me and my family come through this safely. Keep up the good work, but remember, I'm still out here and I still do vote. Respectfully, Cheryl Rashkin. The last comment card is from Dustin Zacks at 216 North Federal Highway. He writes, sometimes I think if Pelican Pete had dynamite for brains, he wouldn't have enough to blow his cute little hat off. Calling an elected representative and a local civics teacher with an inspiring personal background, a child lecturing adults, only contributes to the further lowering of our public discourse. I can understand constructive criticism, perhaps mentioning that Mr. Hardy strays into McBoy land and begins to repeat himself occasionally, but calling a grown man a child? Really now? Is there any wonder why there's so much anti-boomer sentiment among people my age and younger? Whether I agree with Omari's policy preferences or not is quite beside the point. He simply repeated CDC guidelines, and his reporting of these guidelines, whether or not we met them, was 100% factually confirmed by the Sun Sentinel's reporting this past Sunday. We're supposed to take unfounded insults from the generation that invented free love but was against gay marriage, the generation that put linoleum over every hardwood floor in the country. Honestly, if I had $1 every time a boomer complained about a millennial, I'd have enough money to buy a house in the market that boomers ruined. How many boomers does it take to change a light bulb? It doesn't matter how many, because they'll just sit there and tell you how great the old one was. Well, now that we've aired the grievances like Festivus, I know I will put these senseless insults aside, and as always, I look forward to more civil times. Particularly, I would like to warmly extend an invitation to Pelican Pete to join my Halloween celebration this year. We're going to try boomer style trick-or-treating. You know, that's where you go really early before everyone else, take all the candy, insist you earned it, and then complain about millennials the rest of the night. Hope to see you there, Pelican Pete. Ciao, ciao. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's all the comments.
Okay, moving on to approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the consent agenda, I'll entertain a motion moved by the Vice Mayor. Is that your hand up for a motion,
So
Vice
moved,
Mayor?
yes.
Second, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business. I just want to let everyone know I'm not a boomer, I'm a Gen Xer. New business, A, Second Amendment to lease with RTT Benny's on the Beach, Inc.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, thank you very much. The next two items actually involve the same person and entity. And there are two requests that we received that we're bringing to you tonight. I apologize for the timeliness of these items, but we were in discussions, and the COVID-19 remote discussions sometimes make things difficult. So I appreciate your patience. We've tried to talk to each one of you about these items. So in order to keep things very straightforward, the attorney is going to go through and give you the very high level specifics. And then if you have any questions, we can go through there. So Madam Attorney Christy Godot will take the presentation on both of these items, starting with the Benny's lease first.
Madam City Attorney, would you care to?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all
Perfect.
right. So Benny's on the Beach, what we're proposing is the Second Amendment to the lease. And before I get into this, I just want to, for both these items, to clarify that when we start talking about an abatement and deferral of rent, we're talking about the base rent. For both Benny's and Mulligan's, there's base rent based on square footage for Mulligan's and the services and the square footage on Benny's, but there's other things that they pay that go towards the overall rent they pay. But I'm talking about base rent. So for Benny's, their base rent is $20,000 a month. Mulligan's base rent is $15,900 and change. So just sort of keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this. But going through on the proposed Second Amendment for Benny's, I'm going to hit the highlights, and then perhaps if Madam Mayor, we can go into questions if people want to get into specific issues. So on Benny's, the two big requests for Benny's is obviously to address the impact of COVID-19 and then to address infectious diseases as they may occur in the future. So what has been proposed here specifically related to COVID-19 is that there will be, starting on June 1st. Now for Benny's, they're going to pay March, April, and May rent. That will be paid. Starting on June 1st, if there are still COVID restrictions in place on their indoor occupancy that restricts their current existing occupancy level, what's proposed is a 50% abatement and a 50% deferral, meaning 50% of their base rent will be abated and 50% will be deferred. The deferred rent will continue to be deferred until the COVID restrictions are completely lifted, or November 1st, whichever comes earlier. Now, obviously the abated rent will not be paid, but the deferred will be held and not paid till the earlier of all the restrictions lifted or November 1st. If it's, say, November 1st, that restrictions are all lifted, then Benny's will have 1 year to pay back the deferred rent. Now that's on the COVID restrictions. We also have proposed a provision to address infectious disease in general. And the way that provision currently is drafted is that as of November 1st, if there are government restrictions based on an infectious disease that restricts the tenant's use of its existing indoor occupancy, then we will go into a deferral situation based on the percentage that they're limited by. So the example we provide in the draft lease, if the restrictions say they can only use 25% of their indoor occupancy, then 75% of their base rent will be deferred. Again, during the deferral period will last until the restrictions are lifted or until 1 year from the initial deferment. Then the tenant, Benny's, will have to pay all of the deferred rent under that provision. Outside of those two provisions, the only other major change to this lease was to address a scrutinized companies provision that we have to add into Benny's lease, because Benny's, unlike our other tenants, does provide a service to the city in that it manages the pier and runs the pier. I should also mention that in Benny's lease, they do have an ability to seek an abatement of rent due to the pier closure. They have agreed in our negotiations with them to waive that abatement based on the pier closure and go with the two provisions that I just discussed. So those are the major provisions on the Benny's Second Amendment.
Okay, Vice Mayor, you had a question? Vice Mayor,
No, I just wanted to make a motion to approve staff's recommendation.
do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any, do we have to announce any type of ex parte or anything like that, City Attorney?
Madam Mayor, you do not. This is
Okay.
purely just amending the lease that's existing.
Okay.
I
Is that-
mean, obviously, if you want.
Because everybody knows them.
Right,
Everybody
it
knows
never
them. and
hurts.
talks all about it. Exactly. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was said. I'm sorry. So Vice Mayor, you made the motion. Commissioner Hardy, you seconded the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Question for you, Christy. Did the abatement period for that was just till November 1st or whichever comes sooner? Is that correct?
That's correct. For the abatement, the 50% abatement, 50% deferral due to COVID only goes through November 1st.
Okay.
And Madam Mayor,
Yes.
to the point that the attorney made that there is an abatement provision in the current lease regarding the pier operation of $300 a day. So if you took a month and you multiplied that times the $300 a day, it's about half the rent that
Okay.
technically the lease. And Mr. Lipton has already committed to paying the rent during the period that we've had the longest and widest closures that would affect that provision for March, April, and May. So I wanted to make sure people understood the dollar amounts. We're talking about $9,000 is half of the total nut approximately that he pays per month there for the Benny's Pier lease. So just to put that in perspective, he's entitled to that anyway.
Okay.
Okay.
Vice Mayor, do you have a hand up again?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask our attorney, we heard from some of our other tenants, have we been in contact with our other tenants, and are we looking to do something along the same line, or what are your thoughts, or what's going on out there?
Madam Mayor, if I may defer to the city manager, I think he's had more conversations.
Sure. City Manager, would you mind?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, we've had two discussions because we didn't want to get into specific commitments until we've had a chance to thoroughly vet that. I would anticipate that some of the provisions provided here, which really are very limited for abatement or deferral, is something that I anticipate coming back to you for. But the way that this is written, it's probably incredibly conservative compared to what some of the other items we were presenting earlier. So we just need some time to kind of calculate this across all the leases and see if that's something we want to even consider. But I'll be bringing back those recommendations for your final conversation and approval or disapproval and change in the near future.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
I just, I'm concerned about the other tenants that we have. I appreciate Mr. Lipton managing the pier as a service. I didn't understand that leasing was a service to us. I'm trying to understand outsourcing of our assets, which I have talked about before. I've also talked about fairness, and here we are talking about one tenant and not considering a policy for our tenants. City manager, you talked about further conversations and need to study more of the consequences. And I'm a fan of what the Lipton family has done at the pier. I look forward to their success at the Mulligan area. But I'm not prepared to immediately approve one lease without talking to our other tenants. As a responsibility as a landlord, you have to be fair to our tenants. I want to make it as fair as possible to Benny's, but I also, in fairness, don't see how we can make a decision on one lease without studying the other consequences.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardy.
Sure. Excuse me. I just wanted to say I felt the same way. I also, and as I've said previously, I would prefer to know that the folks who are getting our help need our help. But what I was informed of today by Ms. Godot was that in the negotiation for the agenda item that comes after this one, we made some concessions on amending the lease for Benny's. And so while the two items are two separate agenda items, they are unconnected. And so this was part of the give when it comes to our negotiations on the Mulligan's property. Am I wrong in that, Christy?
City Attorney?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I think what the distinction that we've been trying to deal with is that they're connected, but they're unconnected. The big difference with Benny's, as the manager mentioned too, is that the pier, he has a rent abatement provision in there that he's waiving. And so based on him waiving what I estimated to be about $18,000 and change to go with the provisions that I laid out, creates a different scenario for Benny's than what our other tenants have at the casino, because our other tenants at the casino have no abatement provision in their current leases. So it would be nice to take these all and make it one size fits all. But unfortunately, because there are some differences in our leases and because Benny's is a little bit different and obviously the assignment to Mulligan's is a little bit different, I think looking at them on a case-by-case basis and figuring out what works for each tenant and for the city may be the best approach.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
I put my hand down, but I was looking for that answer from the city attorney, because traditionally, you know, I was merely asking if some of what we're working with Benny's on the Beach and Mulligan's can work in other leases, but traditionally, you know, each lease had been done individually, and that's the answer I was looking for from the city attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
Well, there's a motion to accept this as is, and I'm not in favor of it. I would hope that we have a motion after this that would bring us back to address our 6 tenants that we have, understanding that each one is individual business, different circumstances. So in you know, I again am looking forward to making all the concessions that work for Benny's and the city, but not tonight at this time, without further negotiations with our other tenants to be fair. I can appreciate Benny or Lee, his excitement to take over the Mulligan's property, and that's something I look forward to with much glee. But in terms of abatements, I'm not ready to do that tonight. I will consider it after we've considered our other 5 tenants.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, are there any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
We've got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on to new business item B, Second Amendment to Retail Lease with Mulligan's Lake Worth Acquisition LLC. City Manager or City, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, you had something?
Motion to approve as staff written.
Okay, second.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. City Manager or City Attorney?
Madam Mayor, just by way of introduction, this also involves Mr. Lipton, and it's a little more intensive because in this case, he is transacting an amendment to take over an existing lease that's currently operated with Mulligan's. And that was entered into when the casino was originally put out and we negotiated leases back then. There was one amendment that changed the legal entity. At the time, there was some transfer of ownership, and that was reflected in the First Amendment. The Second Amendment allows that lease to continue. So the heart of and we've talked about this, the square footage that we get on this, the CAM, all those things, the 3.5% interest each year, that the escalator that goes up, all those things are still intact in this assumption of this lease, but there were some other negotiated things. And one of the things that Christy just went through, we'll go over that as well. But I'm going to let her now go over the bullet points so that you're clear on what this amendment actually does.
All right, talk legal to us here.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. Commissioners, okay, so this is on Mulligan's. This is the proposed Second Amendment for Mulligan's lease. The initial provisions to this proposed amendment provide that rent is going to be paid for March, April, May, and June. If the city does not receive the June rent, this all becomes null and void. So we will have those months of rent fully covered. In consideration of receiving those rents, we're going to allow for the assignment to go forward to New Start LLC, which is Mr. Lipton's new limited liability corporation. The new use of the restaurant will be as a Mexican themed restaurant. The substantive provision of the amendment include that once we receive the June rent, he will have 3 months. So July, August, and September will be 3 months of free rent in order for him to do renovations. And they have said that the renovations are estimated to be $150,000 to convert the space for their Mexican themed restaurant. Starting October 1st, or if they open earlier than October 1st, the rent will begin to be due. The rent is proposed as the same existing rent, that's the base rent for the square footage of Mulligan's, which is $15,910.11 per month. That's the base rent. That will be the same. And as the manager mentioned, under this amendment, that base rent will go up at 3.5% each year for the full term of this lease. What is being proposed is that the lease term will be extended. Right now, Mulligan's has, I believe, 8 years left of its original term. I'm sorry, 2 years left of its original term, and then has 2 5-year renewals. What's going to happen now with this proposed Second Amendment is that Mr. Lipton will have a 10-year initial term commencing October 1, or the rent commencement date, which will run for 10 years, and then he'll have 2 5-year options for renewal. as to the security deposit, we've asked for a security deposit, and what they have proposed is a security deposit covering 2 full months of base rent, which is approximately $31,000 as a security deposit. Similar to what I talked about on Benny's, we have proposed 4 mulligans in terms of the COVID abatement and deferral and the infectious disease deferral. The timeframes are a little bit different, and that's to recognize that in mulligans, he's starting open a whole new restaurant. So for the COVID deferral abatement, which you remember is 50% deferral and 50% abatement, that would start at the earliest on October 1st or whenever they start open for business and run through December 31st of this year. That would give them, if there's COVID restrictions in place, that rent abatement and deferral. Then beginning January 1st of next year, 2021, through March 31st of 2021, there would be an additional deferral if COVID-19 restrictions are still in place and they have a limit on their indoor occupancy. They would end all of that abatement and deferral related to COVID at the latest as of April 1st, 2021, and that would commence his repayment period on the rent deferral. Going down to deal with the infectious disease provision, just like on Benny's, as of April 1st, 2021, they will have that deferral if there's an infectious disease that restricts their indoor occupancy. Again, it's a deferral that will last no more than 1 year, and there's a 1-year repayment period. The proposed lease also addresses some cleanup items. We had to address an issue with the grease traps to make sure it's clear that that's the responsibility of the tenant and not the city to maintain and pump the grease traps. The other major item that we are addressing in this lease is the right of first refusal on the upstairs vacant space. This is a space directly above Mulligan's. What's been proposed is a 6-month right of first refusal, so that during those 6 months that start from the rent commencement date, which will be October 1st or earlier, they will have 6 months to say, hey, city, we want to use that space. If a third party comes to the city during those 6 months and say, hey, city, I want to use that space, we have to go to them and ask them, do you want to exercise your right of refusal or not? If they don't exercise, they waive it. After the 6 months, the right of first refusal expires and goes away. Those are the substantive provisions that this amendment address, similar to Benny's, but tweaks on it to address the different situation, obviously, here with a new restaurant potentially opening up.
Madam City Attorney, I'm sorry, just one piece I'm missing. Was there any abatement requested starting January of 21? Deferral?
It's a deferral. So the only abatement that would occur would be from the rent commencement date, which is October 1 or earlier, whenever they open, through December 31st of 2020. That's the only time they're eligible to the 50% abatement. After that, all becomes deferral.
Okay, so no abatement in 21. All right, and and it's for COVID-19 or any other restrictions or
right.
health?
The first deferral from January through March is for COVID. After, on April 1st, it's an infectious disease.
But it has to involve closures.
Right, it has to restrict their indoor capacity.
Okay. Commissioner Hardy?
Sure, and I've had this conversation with Ms. Godot already, and we discussed it at length. My only thing is, look, most of us who know Lee know that Lee is good for the $150,000 of improvements that he has pledged to make at the site. But if he were not Lee, and if he were someone else, I wonder if we would accept $150,000 worth of improvements to a property that we own as consideration for some things that we're giving him, in this case, the assignment of the lease and the 3 months off of rent from the months between July and October. I just wonder that, and I've had a conversation with Ms. Godot, and it's her belief that it may be impractical to attempt to verify that $150,000 of value went into the property, but I trust Mr. Lipton, and he has a fantastic track record at our facility, which is which he's operated out of Benny's. It's been a phenomenal draw, and I trust what he can do at this site. I just hope that in the future, as we deal with other folks, that they're not looking for similar deals, that don't require much in the way of verification. But Mr. Lipton is a trustworthy guy. He can do this. He's shown it, and I think it's very important to get someone with his vision and track record at that particular site, especially given the second floor opportunity that we've been dying to convert on for the last decade nearly. So,
Commissioner Robinson?
Yeah, I really think we're in a fantastic position to have a tenant like Lee step forward for the Mulligan property. With the immediate closing of Mulligan's and Lee stepping in, you couldn't ask for a whole lot more. But we haven't talked about the area to the west in the grass area in terms of leasing or operation, or what's going to happen to that area. I don't, after 6 months, we don't know what kind of appeal the second floor is going to have if Lee doesn't take over half of it. More than half of it. Again, I think we might be acting in haste. I would certainly rather come back for a meeting as soon as possible to further talk about this with the other tenants, because again, I'll go to fairness, and I don't in no way want to be a problem for signing this lease with Lee. But in terms of city's operation, I think we're being a little a little too excited to grab the first part of this now. I'd like to hear more about the grass area, because I think that's a fantastic sunset area. We're dealing with oceanfront property, and again, we haven't even put out a proposal for the second floor, regardless of what happened to Mulligan's or what happens to Benny's. We have not marketed our oceanfront park in terms of, and there's still the pool area that I'm hoping somebody like Lee would step forward and work his magic there like he did at the pier. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Hardy, did you have another question, or did you leave your hand up from the last time?
I just wanted to make sure the 6-month right of first refusal starts at the lease start date, based on the conversation that I have with Ms. Godot. Is that accurate? And is the lease start date October 1? So that would mean 6 months from October 1, bringing us into 2021, hopefully, when we are on our way, hopefully, to an economic recovery.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes, that is correct. Well, it starts on the rent commencement date, which more than likely will be October 1 unless he opens earlier. It's the date he's open for business, but no later than October 1st. So it runs from that 6-month period.
I'm wondering what my colleagues might think about. I don't know if tolling is the right word, but in the event that capacity at the beach, restaurant capacity at the beach is less than 100% because of COVID-19 or some other infectious disease, would we consider pausing that, the 6 months that count towards this right of first refusal?
I'm sorry. Can you rephrase that? I'm sorry.
Okay, so, let's say, so the right of first refusal starts beginning October 1, which is the lease start date, right? But there are provisions in his agreement that basically say, look, if we're still under restrictions due to an infectious disease like COVID-19, and his restaurant capacity is not, is like 50% or 25% or, whatever it is, given the way that restaurants are operating right now because of the governor's order and local orders. If we get into a situation like that, his 6-month clock is still ticking, right? Even though he doesn't have business coming in as usual. And so I'm wondering if we might consider changing this agreement so that if there are restrictions on business activity due to COVID-19 or some other pandemic, that we would pause that 6-month clock. I don't know if that's understood, but I don't know what your guys' temperature is on that. But if we think that those 6 months might be over before the economy recovers and before we can capture the full value of that upstairs space, then we might consider pausing it for as long as businesses have to shut down or restrict their activity. Christy, is that something that's legally possible? And then
City
I wonder.
City Attorney, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's absolutely possible. And sometimes you have a right of first refusal. It doesn't have any time limitation on it. It's just out there. I will tell you, in negotiations with Mr. Lipton and his attorney, one of the things we discussed was the fact that the city is looking at doing a potential P3 project up there and wanting to be able to not encumber that P3 project by potentially a right of first refusal. So we did look to put a time limitation on it so that at some point you could do a P3 project that you don't have to go to the tenant and ask about the right of first refusal. In reality, if that right of first refusal expires after 6 months and we don't have someone on deck to take that space and Mr. Lipton approached us, I don't know, if that we would have a different frame of mind. We just wanted to put a time frame on it. And quite frankly, that is what Mr. Lipton asked for, was a 6-month right of first refusal so he can assess, even knowing that COVID could still be in place, to be able to assess whether his business model is successful in wanting to expand into that place. But that's what he requested, 6 months, and we thought that was reasonable so we don't make our P3 project encumbered by something else.
Okay, that's cool with me.
Thank you. I also just wanted to respond to a couple of questions in the community saying, why is this not out for an RFP process? And I want to remind everyone that when Mulligan's changed ownership, City Manager, can you help me explain this a little bit? Because there was a couple of people that asked this question.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, in this transaction, it was actually negotiated, the deal to take over the lease. I know Mr. Lipton approached Mr. Hart of Mulligan's. So it was a transaction that they brought forward basically to reassign the lease over. We've just been negotiating some additional conditions and some things that we want to see in there, and he's been doing the same. But the lease, the relationship with the city, that's why this is an amendment and not an entirely new lease that we'd put out for an RFP. And
same as Mamma Mia's did a while back too, right?
yeah, we've done that several times. Mr. Lipton did it when he acquired Benny's on the beach and the pier
Right.
from Peter and John. It wasn't put out for bid because that was something that they desired to actually conduct this exchange. And it has to come to you as the owner to say it's okay or not. So it's not an RFP process. Some people may have gotten that confused. It's not put out on the street for bid.
Right. I just want to make sure that we clarify that. Also, I'm in support of this. I'm excited about this. You know, here we are, you know, looking at me with 95% of my private business in hospitality and restaurant business, having to deal with this pandemic has been just earth-shattering to a lot of restaurants and to me as well. But seeing someone who is successful in our city, not another city, but in our city, wanting to invest more in a building, you know, in an operation that was going to be shuttered for who knows how long, you know, unless this transaction happens. So I'm looking forward to a new concept up there. I'm looking forward to keeping that place full and exciting, despite whether you're at 25%, 50%, or 100%. It's 100% fun at the Lake Worth Beach Casino, and I'm very, very happy that Mr. Lipton is stepping up. His staff is wonderful, and his managers are great. And as Commissioner Hardy said earlier too, they do a fine job at Benny's, and I'm looking forward to this next move.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Lipton's actually on the phone as part of the meeting. If y'all had any questions or if he wanted to make a comment here before y'all come to the end of this conversation, I'm sure he always has some comments.
Commissioner Robinson, did you have a comment?
No, I'm glad that the explanation of buying the lease didn't have anything to do with a PPP on this location. I look forward to a request for a proposal on our pool area and whatever area on the second floor is available. And I look forward to a Mexican hat dance somewhere over there at Mulligan's.
I'll join you. All right, we've got a motion on the floor in a second. City Clerk, are there any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very, very, very much. And Mr. Lipton, sorry, we didn't need you. We have more questions for you, but we're excited for you.
We do need it.
We need you. Yeah, we do. Not this evening. All right, moving on to City Attorney. Do you have a report?
No, Madam Mayor, thank you.
City Manager, do you? You're muted.
I'm sure my wife is watching and she wishes she could mute me sometimes.
She told me so.
I just want to go over some upcoming meeting dates so that everybody is keeping abreast of these meetings and some of the important things that are coming up that people need to tune in for and y'all need to be aware of. Memorial Day obviously is a holiday day off for the city on the 25th, but the next day on the 26th, that evening at 6 o'clock, we'll be doing a remote electric utility meeting. So y'all get a chance to talk about the electric utility specifically. Into June, our next meeting will be regular commission meeting on June the 2nd. Then the following Tuesday on June the 9th, we have the Bohemian Project. There's a quasi-judicial and meeting that'll be coming up on their project, as well as a budget workshop. So we've combined a couple of items there, and you'll be starting to see some numbers from Bruce. The 16th will be our regular commission meeting on that Tuesday. We have a second budget workshop scheduled on the 25th of June. And then at the last day of June on the 30th, the Bohemian quasi-judicial will be coming back to you for adoption. And we'll be combining that with the electric utility meeting that'll be following immediately after. In July, the city is closed since the 4th of July falls on a Saturday. We'll be closed the preceding Friday, so that's the closed. On the 7th will be our first regular commission meeting. The 21st will be the next. We'll be having a budget workshop on the 21st is a regular, and on the 23rd we have a workshop. The 28th we'll have the electric utility meeting, and then on the 30th we have a work session on LDR and comp plan changes. With that, I did miss one very important meeting this coming Thursday. How could I miss this week? We have a special meeting for a budget item, which will take little time, but we're going to go into the workshop on the vacation rentals issue. So that'll be this coming Thursday night here at 6 o'clock. And with that, Madam Mayor, those are upcoming meetings.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to
Madam
adjourn.
Mayor, could I ask the city manager about Memorial Day with American Legion Post 47?
City manager, if you would, please.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, we have a annual event that's held actually with the Boy Scouts, as I understand, are the ones that coordinate that. We're in conversations right now about, originally we understood that they were canceling it. They didn't want to hold something. We now have found out today that may be coming back on. We just want to be very cautious on how we handle that. A lot of the attendees are in the age groups. And I see Mr. Rua as the assistant city manager who is over that function. If you want to provide some comments, Juan, you can step in and provide an update.
Thank you, City Manager, Madam Mayor. To the City Manager's point, their staff is moving forward with coordinating with the entities to have the ceremony Memorial Day event at the cemetery. It will be a very condensed version of what maybe people are used to in the past. We want to make sure that we adhere strictly to the social distancing guidelines and make sure we, do this in a very safe manner. The Boy Scout troop has reached out and, they still wish to go around the cemetery and place American flags and crosses on the tombstones of our fallen veterans. We do want to make some seating available to the veterans and any disabled vets that show up. Again, we'll set up the 20 by 20 tent and provide some shade and a PA for our guest speaker to speak, but it'll be very small. There won't be much promotion or PR going out on it. Because again, we're still under, some social guidelines that we want to adhere to. So the event will go on and we'll do our best to do it in a safe manner.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, just want to throw in one thing. City manager, you and I talked about this in the past, and I know we're on the buddy system and the honor system here now that we're meeting virtually. But one of our rules, our rules of decorum here, is to not use electronic devices to receive emails, texts, or any kind of communication at all. You can use your computer to look up something, on if you're trying to reference something or pull up your agenda online. But there's no communications between the commission and anybody else, whether it be social media, whether it be websites, texts, or anything. And that was set into motion, I believe. City clerk, you could probably tell me exactly when it was, but I think it was in 2013 that was put into our rules. So if you could just keep that in mind, I used to do it from the dais a lot, but now that we're all on our own, I expect you to use the honor system of not communicating. It's disrespectful also to be doing something while you're supposed to be meeting for the business of the city. So if you can keep that in mind, I'd appreciate it. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. You don't want to stop.
So
There we
moved.
go. All right, we've got a motion and a second. It was moved by Commissioner Robinson, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Good night, everyone. Be safe. Wash your hands. Thank you, thank you, thank you.